You're listening to Tech Titans, a Rose Rocket podcast where we unlock the minds behind the digital revolution in transportation. From innovative strategies to industry insights, we spotlight the trailblazers driving North America's tech evolution. Here's your host, Tim Hopkins.
Hello everyone, I'm Tim Hopkins, VP of Enterprise here at Rose Rocket. Welcome to Tech Titans. Each episode we talk to people who are challenging the status quo and doing interesting work with technology in the world of transportation. Our guest today is John Paape, VP of Technology and CIO for Roehl Transport. John leads the delivery of technology solutions and innovation across all areas of the business. As a leader with a unique history of technology and operations roles spanning the military, medical, manufacturing, and transportation, he has an exceptional understanding of the business processes and internal and external customer needs at Roehl. John also serves in leadership roles within several organizations that are focused on expanding technology innovation, IT security collaboration, and talent development within the state of Wisconsin. Thanks for your time today, John.
Tim, thanks for the invite. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. With a background like that, I'd love to hear a bit more about what you do day to day at Roehl and how you got into it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Day to day at Roehl, I think I've had the privilege of, my role today really gets me into kind of all areas of technology, like you talked about in the intro. But I also get the privilege of working, on the executive leadership team and really helping, discuss and decide some major things for the organization as a whole. So being part of those decision-making processes, I really enjoy. Just not, they're not all technology related. It can be anything within the organization. So my day-to-day work involves, technology and non-technology responsibilities. And like you said, I've been in technology for a long time. I counted up this morning. I'm just tipping the needle on 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've had just a really unique set of opportunities, working in the military. Medical certainly was very interesting time in technology for me. The manufacturing work, both global and domestic, was really interesting, and again broadened my understanding of technology and the application of it. And then for the last 10 years, being in transportation and logistics. So kind of an interesting story about me. When I was in my last manufacturing organization, I was at about year 6 or 7 with that company, and they asked me to take over leading operations at our largest manufacturing facility, which seemed completely an atypical opportunity for a technologist. And I think the 550 people that worked at that facility also agreed. They're like, oh my gosh, why is this guy running our organization? But it turned out really well. And it gave me a really unique opportunity to become a customer of all the technology that all those years before I was providing. And I think that's just a really unique vantage point that a lot of people in technology never get to experience. And it was a really great 2 or 3 years where I spent, leading operations. Not only did I understand a lot more about operations after I left that, but just being a customer of technology, I think gave me a different perspective.
Gotcha. So, with a background like that, coming out of an operations role and having the background in technology, why did you choose to go into trucking? Like, was there something about it that sort of pulled you in?
I don't know if it was so much about trucking. I think what it really was hearing Rick Roehl and the Roehl executive team talk about, their vision for technology and the industry. And I think that compelling vision and the passion that they had around what technology could do for the organization, to me, felt like such a breath of fresh air compared to spending the last 17 years or so in manufacturing, where technology was just viewed differently. And hearing this vision was just very refreshing and got me really excited. And not really understanding anything about tech or transportation and logistics, I still jumped in, and it's been a great ride ever since.
Right. And you've been, I think, in the role for maybe about 10 years now. So you must have seen a bit of change in your time at Roehl and, across the industry. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, some of the thoughts I have maybe are probably a little around the industry itself.
Mm.
I think probably like a lot of folks who come into transportation logistics, I think I grossly underestimated the complexity. It didn't seem from the outside to be that complex. And when you
Yeah.
got into it, I was I was amazed at just the depth. I should say it differently, the breadth of technology, but then within each area, just the depth. I mean, it really is it's a sector of our industry that just really embraces technology, and that's been um, really surprising, and it makes that really a lot of fun. I think the pace of the industry was also so much different than manufacturing. Manufacturing was very much a year over year continual slow improvement, and the transportation space has just been moves at such a quicker rhythm, which has been
Right.
exciting and fun. To me, there's never really a static time. You have several variables changing at once, and whether it's market things or disruptive technologies coming in, or different organizations innovating and bringing new products, but there's just so much change happening at one time. It makes it a lot of fun. And I would say that the opportunities to improve things and to change things in a positive direction, those opportunities almost seem endless,
Mm.
with, within this sector. So it's made my last 10 years really a lot of fun, and I just can't believe it's been 10 years already. It's just gone so fast.
Yeah, I mean, like having kind of stepped into this industry relatively recently, I think the diversity of it is something that surprised me. I was like, what are the opportunities for trucking companies to really differentiate using technology? And it turns out there's actually a lot of them. You have all the line of business kind of systems that you need from, every other organization, but then you also have the dynamic with the customers and with the operational side, and that dictates what you can do with technology and really how you might go out and be in the market and use it as a differentiator. So that certainly surprised me. Has there been something about this kind of journey over the last 10 years that's really surprised you? Like one thing is like I would never have thought like this was as critical as what it was, or important, or an opportunity to differentiate, like something around technology.
I probably have a couple thoughts in this
Mm-hmm.
space. I think what I've seen over the last 10 years in terms of how carriers have leveraged technology, and I think rail falls into each one of these areas, is kind of to drive rapid innovation and application within the safety realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So safety industry is paramount, and especially at rail. And I think technology, leveraging technology solutions has helped carriers be safer, our drivers be safer, and the individuals that we share the road with, right? Improving the safety for them as well. And I definitely thought that, that's probably one of the first things that come top of mind with our core principles of
Mm.
our organization. Safety is on the top of that list. I think another one that I've seen carriers and rail use technology for a lot over the last 10 years is to improve and automate decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing that for the last 10 years, but the pace of that is just kind of taking off. And with all the innovation around AI, and I'm sure you can't have a technology conversation today without saying that 10 or 15 times. But certainly that is going to supercharge, the automation of decisions, right? And that's a big part that I've seen over the last 10 years, and we've been doing it for a long time. But now the evolution of AI is just going to further, improve and increase that velocity. So certainly that's an area. Um, and another thing that I think carriers and rail use technology for significantly has been just leveraging data better, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the tools to leverage data, aggregate it. One of the things was really refreshing for me was just the amount of data that our industry has available, both generated within the walls of each organization, right? You think of all the data that every single truck on the road produces,
Mm-hmm.
but then all the external data sources that are out there, from fuel pricing to road conditions to traffic speeds and all these different external data elements, and now the technologies to bring those in and mesh them in a much easier fashion to help drive and automate some decisions has been just a lot of fun to watch that evolve and to help our organization leverage that to just do a better job and deliver, a better solution and result to our customers. So that's been really an interesting thing. And then I think, from the last 10 years on the technology front for us too, has just been deeper and stronger connections with our customers.
Right.
As our customers want to automate their processes, and this has been there forever. I mean, even with some of the basic EDI, connections, but just technologies available today have allowed us to just build deeper connections with our customers. And certainly they benefit from that. But what we're really on the cusp of now is helping some of our drivers get benefit from that, automating and streamlining their day, when they pull up to a shipper or consignee. Anytime you can take friction out of that part of their day by making it faster, more seamless, and helping them turn around to get back on the road is something that I think these connections with customers have really helped. So I think that's been a big part too.
Yeah, and when I started to learn a little bit more about the Roehl story and I guess Rick Roehl, I mean the thing that jumped out at me is just how driver-centric Roehl Transport actually is. Like, it seems to be like deep in the DNA. And, I was listening to a couple of the podcasts that you've been on talking about, hey, here's the great technology that we're delivering to our drivers. And there seems to be a real focus for you and for the organization. So can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, was there a conscious point where you kind of went, hey, like we need to take a bunch of our resources, a bunch of our energy and just make sure that our drivers are having better systems and better, having a better experience? Or is it something that's just kind of evolved over time?
I would say for Roehl and what I know about the Roehl story, and certainly my time with Roehl over the last 10 years, it's always been a very driver-centric organization. And I think that started from day one, right? When Rick's father had one single truck, and it's kind of grown from there. But it's always been a very driver-focused, driver-centric organization. And, I think what I would say is that all Roehl employees play a really important role in the success of the company, for sure. But the driver, I think we know that the driver is in a very unique work environment. They're operating this very large vehicle. Most of the time for our drivers are going to a completely unknown destination every time, right? They're not going to the same place like some dedicated fleets do. And then you have this dynamic environment operating around you, and everything that everyone else in the company is doing kind of comes to fruition, kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? For the driver, the destination times, the pickup numbers, the routing, the fuel solutions, the quality of the maintenance work that's done. And it all needs to be perfect every time. And the driver, when it's not, the driver is the one that's really impacted because they have to deal with that unexpected gap in whatever they're getting, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we appreciate the challenge of that work environment. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are always kind of focusing on what that driver experience is, because we know that if everyone else is doing their jobs well in the organization, then that's going to be a good experience. But when they're not, it's not. And I guess the way I look at it is the work that our drivers do every day truly makes the work that everyone else does valuable, right? Because if we're not delivering that load, then every other part of that work really can't get the value out of it, right? So
yeah, I think there's a lot in there. And so, as you've, been looking at, and delivering technology to the drivers, how have you kind of partnered with them? Have you got a driver council or a way that you solicit ideas from them or, understand what they need? Because, within that driver experience, there's just so many areas. So how do you figure out what to focus on, within the totality that you could be doing there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually have the privilege of chairing our driver advisory group, and it's just something that we needed an owner for, and not that it's a technology specific responsibility, but I really enjoy just taking that on for the organization and helping pull a group of drivers together 3 or 4 times a year to really give feedback on a variety of topics.
Hmm.
And that is one I would say of many different sources that we have. But one of the things I think we've done a good job is weaving in throughout a driver's day, throughout a month or at a 6 month or annual interval, but certainly even to a daily aspect, systematic ways where we're asking for feedback. You
Right.
know, how is your route? How is your fuel solution? And continually understanding what we did right, where the opportunities to improve are, how is the driver feeling? Is there something else we can do to make that experience better? And we've just made that part of our culture, of making sure that we're pulling in these data points, and then the leadership team is really looking at that and taking that into account when they're making decisions. So I think as an organization, we've done a really nice job. We have an electronic suggestion box that's kind of woven into our technology, and that um, gets just tremendous visibility with every single driver comment that comes in. And I think drivers are amazed at the rate at which we respond to those suggestions. So I think our drivers definitely know that we really want their feedback and we really take it seriously.
Right. And do drivers come to you and say, hey, the way that Rail provides us with technology is a differentiator? So is this something that you get feedback and they go, I can really feel the results of all of these efforts and all of these initiatives as a driver? Like they feel like it makes a material difference to their day and to their experience?
That's interesting because our drivers, because we have our own CDL schools and we
Hmm.
train a lot of our new drivers and they come in without any external industry experience.
Hmm.
I think it's hard for them to really compare.
Right.
And but one of the things that I am very proud of is the fact that when we bring in, for example, non-drivers who have relevant industry experience with other carriers
Hmm.
and they work on our technology sets that we've created, they are amazed at what we've put together. And typically, these folks are coming from very large carriers. And the fact that we are getting very favorable feedback from them tells me that we're doing something right.
Mm, that's great. And I mean, one of the things that kind of jumped out at me when I listened to the Rail podcast is, you've gone and actually built your own hardware or work with a company to build your own tablet hardware. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Like, why did you get to the point where it's like, okay, we need to do something very, very specific here, and what did that process look like?
I think that kind of goes back to the DNA of our organization, and I think every organization has a different personality.
Right.
For Rail, we are very much, um, our culture and personality is that we value our business processes and how we run our business, and we really put a high price or value on that. So when it comes to technologies to help enable those, we are very much leaning towards the create the technology to support the business process versus a more traditional approach, which is change your business process to match the technology,
Technology.
you know. And it is a little atypical, but we really feel like it's a differentiator for us. And that same thing has trickled into the in-cab environment as well, where we
Hmm.
evaluated a lot of different solutions and a lot of different hardware options for in the cab, and just were not happy with some of the limitations there. And we had an opportunity to partner with another great organization to help them create a more custom solution, and that's the path we're on right now because we feel like it gives us a competitive advantage. We can give something to the drivers that they simply can't get or get as well through more of a commercial off-the-shelf solution.
Right. And how deep does that customization go? I mean, are you in there like, okay, it's this system on a chip, it's this GPU, or is it, hey, taking a bunch of things that maybe are, a little bit more commodified and sort of putting them together? Like how deeply can you influence that?
Extremely deep. I've learned more about that level of engineering than I ever thought I would learn. I
Right.
mean, right down to the design and manufacturing of the main processing board for
Wow. Okay.
this tablet. So yeah, I've been, that's taken a good chunk of my recent year as we're on daily calls with the hardware engineers working through feedback and making tuning and adjustments so that the end product really meets kind of what we're looking for. And we're in the final stages right now of our prototype testing and getting ready to go into full production mode. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's those of us who are, kind of software people, right? And I feel like we get the marginal cost of changing the software is inconvenient, but it's actually solvable when there's a few thousand or a few hundred things rolling off the production line, and you realize it's not quite right. That's a whole different set of problems to solve.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a whole part of technology that I really hadn't experienced before. So it's been a very challenging project, but I would say a very interesting project at the same time. And we're just really excited to get this out into our trucks. I know the drivers that have been doing some of the early prototype testing liked it so much that even though there was some occasional bugs that came
Mm-hmm.
up, they're like, "Oh, don't take it away. I'll deal with it." Just they liked it so much that they did not want us to even touch it. So that's a good sign, and we're optimistic that the driver groups, in a large part, will really enjoy this new technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it kind of speaks to, innovation and innovation at Roehl because, as you speak, there's all these things going on, your use of data, use of hardware, the way that you think about the experience that you're delivering to, the drivers and the stakeholders and the comments you get. So, how do you balance that innovation side of like a technology portfolio with, hey, there's just things I've got to kind of keep the lights on here. Maybe there's like financial systems or processes that, just
Mm-hmm.
need to kind of run versus the things that's like, all right, like this is how Roehl wants to be in the world and the stuff that's going to differentiate you. How do you divide your attention and your resources on that?
It's kind of funny, Tim. For a while there, I was kind of feeling that maybe this is just kind of a rail issue, right? This legacy technology that you have to maintain and trying to figure out how you layer in the innovation and
Mm-hmm.
and all those things. And I was at a meeting in Milwaukee just 2 weeks ago with a bunch of CIOs and CISOs, and we were having a roundtable discussion on kind of a very similar topic. And it it made me feel kind of good to hear every one of those organizations dealing with that same thing, right? It's like, how do I balance exactly what you just talked about? And these are large organizations, and I think everyone's kind of dealing with that same thing, right? You have this legacy technology, and you have this thirst for innovation that the organizations need to be competitive, and how do you balance that? For us, and again, this is one of those things where I think successful IT leaders need to understand the personality of the organization very closely so that their strategies are successful. For us, we use our steering committee as a great tool for that. But one of the things that we do is all of these keep stuff running type things
Mm-hmm.
go on our strategic roadmaps and they go into our priority discussions, but they're viewed as not really movable, right? So
Right.
when the steering committee looks at these, they see them already lined up by my team in terms of priority. And then we work with the steering committee and let them prioritize the innovative things around those,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's what we try and I think the organization, in order for that to be successful, the organization needs to understand, the importance of putting time from that reliability factor. And when you don't do the work that's needed, then you start to lose other things. And our leaders that are on our steering committee really do understand the value of that. So it's been a really positive interaction with us in the business because and we try to not, we try to moderate that. We could fill our entire strategic roadmap with just keep stuff running things, and we
Right.
try and moderate that because we also want to do the innovative things. So we're very selective, but those are kind of solid markers in our strategic plan, and then the steering committee does then fills in all the gaps around that with all the prioritized innovative work.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if I kind of think about, technology in the industry, to me, that's like the big thing which might have changed in like the last, dozen, 15 years, right? Like I keep thinking back to Harvard Business Review articles where IT is a cost center and, what you've got to do is just commoditize it and, do it as cheaply as possible. I mean, I think there's kind of things like that which are kind of out there, but what you're describing is a real kind of partnership with other stakeholders in your organization where they are actually recognizing the value of technology and being brought into a decision-making process, about how do we deploy that value. I mean, did you have to bring people along for that? Or people just kind of, raising their hands to get on board with that kind of process?
It's it kind of goes back to maybe the first few minutes of our discussion today. And that kind of goes back to what I liked about Roehl
Mm-hmm.
Transport. That kind of stood out to me. So if I step back to my manufacturing technology experiences, I felt like technology was very much a cost center, right? It was just a necessary evil. And in fact, I had one operations leader, before I joined Roehl, my last company, one operations leader basically said, "Hey, look, if we could do this with paper and pencil, we would, but we can't. So we got to use you guys.
Oh,
But do it as
charming.
cheap as you can, right?"
Nice. Yeah.
And it doesn't make you feel very great or very excited about doing your job, but it was just kind of it was the fact of the margins were very thin in this specific manufacturing sector, and they just were trying to find a way to take every penny out of the cost, and certainly technology was part of that cost. And when you kind of roll forward now to transportation and logistics, I think that rail, and I think in general this is the case with many other transportation companies, rather than the technology teams pushing technology out, which I felt was very much the case in manufacturing,
Mm-hmm.
there it's reversed. I mean, there's such a pull from the business at rail in terms of wanting more and more and more versus us pushing. And that's a
Right.
whole nother dynamic and 180 degrees different from what I'm used to with my previous experiences. But that's just a whole nother dynamic. So when you have this pull effect happening, I think it does change the dynamic of your steering committees and
Mm-hmm.
how you're interacting with the business because they're just looking at technology completely different. And they're also placing a different value on that technology,
Right.
which then makes the discussions around reliability and those types of things a lot more understanding because they know that without these solutions operating, it makes them really hard for them to be effective in their roles. So those conversations just get easier. And I think that's a big part of what's made my job a lot of fun over the last 10 years.
Right. And I mean, like hearing this, business really values the role of technology. You're able to deploy technology in a way that makes people's experiences better. You're balancing the keep the lights on work with the innovation work. You're looking at new kind of technologies. Is there something that you've done in the last 10 years that you just look back on and go, hey, we just really knocked this one out of the park. Like this is, execution par excellence. Is there something that you're particularly proud of?
You know, there's probably two projects that I mean, first of all, the technology team we have at Rail is by far the most skilled team I've ever had the privilege of working with, and we just have a fantastic team. And so there's the list of hearing that it makes it really hard to pick one or two projects. 'Cause there's been a lot of just some really fantastic things. I think one thing that we're actually publishing an article on here on this in a couple of weeks and doing some press releases. But it's a product called our coaching tool.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of drove that was we have so many external technology partners that have a lot of really great insight for us, whether it's, you know, camera insight or, insight from the OEM sensors on the trucks. But there's a lot of different, trailer tracking and all these different vendors have a way to deliver that information to the end user. And typically that means that those users have to log into a portal,
Right.
consume that information, and interact with it. And that becomes really challenging for operations because their day is already chaotic and they have a lot going on. And to remember to log in and see what's going on and all these different things, typically you're missing a lot of opportunities to really leverage what you're getting out of those expenses to provide that information. And we set out to build a single pane of glass solution for our operations teams that consume all these different data points related to drivers, behaviors related to
Mm-hmm.
safety and productivity, and it pulls it all into one interface that's already integrated into their general screens, and it serves all these things up. It assigns a time to resolve. So for safety sensitive things, we want those addressed really quickly. So it might be 24 or 48 hours, but we expect action on those right away. When the fleet manager interacts with the driver, that call is recorded and appended and attached to that coaching event so that we can evaluate the success of that coaching and how well it was done. And then we track to see if it had a positive impact on that
Right.
behavior.
Right.
So we have coaching effectiveness scores that kind of look at, did this behavior surface again within the next so many days? So we kind of wrapped all that together, and then we can really see how we're doing, but it made it so much easier to consume all these different data points and really, I think, have a tremendous impact on how well we're helping our drivers be successful and safe out there on the road. And I think that certainly has helped us a lot. Roehl is one of the things we're very proud of is that we've won the ATA President's Award 4 times. Very few
Oh,
trucking
wow.
companies can say that. And I think the technology solutions that we've built, and the coaching tool is one of them, certainly has helped our organization be successful.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and I mean, it must be like just rewarding when you see that recognition, kind of coming from places like the ATA is like as an organization just performing at the best that you can possibly do that.
Yeah. Well, and a
Yeah.
lot of companies that we're competing against to win that award are some of these fleets that drive to the same place every day, right? From
Right.
DC to store and back to DC. And so they know that route, they know where the risk points are. And so it's, we're on the other side where our drivers are going to a different location with every stop and with every order. So it's just a different environment. And I would say it's more challenging than some of the other folks that we're competing against for that recognition. So I think we're definitely doing some things right. There's always
Yeah.
opportunities to be better, but I think we're proud of what we've accomplished so far.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And like seasoned CIO, like lots of history of success. But you sound like a technologist at heart. Like getting on the calls every day and talking to the hardware engineers and things like that. So I mean, like, is there anything that you see coming up that you get really excited about? I mean, you mentioned AI, but is there something that you're kind of looking and going, wow, if we could just figure this out, like that would really really change the way that we work or would really deliver benefits to the organization?
You know, that's a great question. When I look back at our list of opportunities for improvements, we have probably close to 900 things in our queue that we've got kind of out there that we're considering of various sizes. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity out there. I really think that two things that have come to my mind a lot over the past 6 months have been AI, and
Hmm.
I would say autonomous.
Right.
both those things are really interesting technologies that a lot of organizations are just staying close to. I mean, nobody's really leveraging those a lot yet. I just talked to a company the other day who's doing a lot of work in terms of autonomous yard automation, right? Moving
Right.
trailers around and those types of things. And you're going to start to see a little bit of more of that in very controlled environments where you can operate that technology for an advantage without you know dealing with some of the other risk points with autonomous on a roadway, for example. But I think those are two that I'm really excited to see how they evolve. I think within our industry, it's going to be a slow evolution for both, but I think companies who successfully leverage those, are kind of doing what we're doing, which is learning, experimenting, talking to a lot of different manufacturers of these technologies and just trying to figure out, you know, where the best place is to start to use some of these things
Right.
and do it in a way that is safe. And
Right.
hey, we're very much in the mix with both of those. Talking, not really doing anything serious with either of those, but really trying to learn where's the best way we can apply this for the biggest advantage. And I think those are probably the two that I would say, Tim, have
Mhm.
been just in first and foremost in all of our discussions lately.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we see lots of people doing early deployments of AI, trying to figure out where the business value is, just trying to get the gears rolling. And, like, I think everyone's kind of going, okay, well, this looks great. Let's go find the use cases. I think it's going to evolve like really, really fast.
And
And
there's
I,
so
yeah,
much going on right now. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that you don't see a new solution launched, right?
yeah,
Or a new and I think it's just like autonomous, although autonomous hasn't necessarily gone through this phase yet, but there's kind of that shakedown, right, where there's a lot of, you know, aggregation of those companies into as they kind of develop their solutions and get bought out and kind of get aggregated into larger entities. And I think you're going to see that happen with some of these AI solutions as well as autonomous, but it hasn't happened as quickly with autonomous as I have expected it to. But I think that's coming here probably more so when the market turns and gets a little bit busier again.
right, right. And then is there anything which you lay awake at night and, just, worry about or concerns you? Like, hey, this looks like it could disrupt us. I need to think about how we would mitigate some of this stuff.
You know, it probably sounds like a broken record, but I think it is in that AI side. I mean, that is really one that I think if we are not on top of how to leverage that, other organizations will. And
Right.
if people can make faster decisions and execute their business processes faster, this is a very quick-paced industry, and speed is huge. And I think that is definitely one that keeps me awake a little bit, aside from that constant topic of cybersecurity, right? That
Yes.
but I think AI and the application of that in terms of speeding up the internal business processes is one that I feel like is going to be critical for any successful organization, because if you're the second person to that load or whatever, right, it's just not going to be there. And
Yeah.
you got to be able to make quick decisions and move fast. And I think AI is going to really help organizations do that. You just need to figure out how to safely deploy and leverage that so it's giving you the results you're looking for. So I think that is definitely one that is top of mind for me.
And I mean, if you had to give anyone some advice if they're stepping into a leadership role at a carrier or a trucking company into an IT leadership role, what would you tell them?
I think my first advice would be spend as much time in a truck as you can.
Right.
Um, that's one thing. I told you a little bit about my operations experience, and one of the things I learned. So when I moved into my operations role a year later, um, we had a new CEO come in, and with this new CEO, he brought in the whole concept of lean manufacturing.
Right.
And one of the things I learned in lean manufacturing was the principle of going to where the work is done, because that's where you're really going to see your opportunity. And I've carried that through as I've transitioned back into technology. And like I said, so much of what everyone does at Roehl, whether it's maintenance or customer service or operations, all comes together inside that truck. And you can really see if you're doing well or if you're struggling. And so seeing that and understanding what's happening in the cab, I think is a huge advantage to any IT leader, because then they get the whole picture at that point. And I think that's really important. So I would say spend as much time in the truck as you can. And then the other thing is just, understand the nuances of transportation logistics. Like I said, this industry is got some very unique things to it. And I love all those unique aspects, but it's definitely different than a lot of other industries. And I think that's really important, just to understand the nuances of this industry. And then finally, just make sure that you understand the personality of your organization. I think that goes to any IT leader who, regardless of the industry they're going in, I think you have to be flexible. And I think that transportation companies and the speed at which they need to operate is different than manufacturing. It's different than finance and banking. And I think you just need to figure out how you mold your organization and your processes to match the velocity and the cycles of the industry, because they really are unique. And I think if you can figure that part out, I think you have a good chance of being really successful. But if you're inflexible, I think that's going to really make it a lot more difficult for any new leader.
Cool. I think that's some fantastic advice. John, thank you so much for joining us. It's been fantastic to hear about what you're up to and what Roehl is up to, and wish you every success with the projects you've got rolling out. Everyone else, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to give us a shout on social media at @FreightFamous and let us know what you think. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again, John, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.